Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today into something really vital if you're dealing with taxes here in the Philippines. It's all about understanding your rights, what you can actually do when you're facing the tax authority.
Absolute crucial stuff.
We're navigating this using the National Internal Revenue Code, but really focusing on the big updates from recent laws.
Right. The train law, EOPT.
Exactly. The Ease of Paying Taxes Act and that very new Create More Act. They've really shifted things.
They certainly have.
So think of this as your kind of shortcut to figuring out how to dispute an assessment, claim a refund, maybe even settle things.
Yeah, getting the core info you need.
Our mission is just to pull out those key actionable bits from the source material we've got so you feel informed, feel ready.
Makes sense.
And here's where it gets, really interesting. These laws aren't just minor tweaks, are they?
No, not at all. They fundamentally change how taxpayers interact with the system.
Especially when things go wrong, yeah.
Precisely. When there's a dispute.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning then. What happens if the BIR, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, thinks you owe more money? How does that whole assessment thing kick off?
Well, typically it starts with an audit. The BIR issues a letter of authority, an LOA.
Right.
If they find things during the audit, potential issues, they might send a notice of discrepancy first. It's kind of a heads up.
Okay, a preliminary notice?
Exactly. If that doesn't get resolved, it escalates. You might get a pre-assessment notice or PAN. That's their formal proposal of what they think you owe.
And if you still don't agree or don't respond?
Then it culminates in the formal demand. That's the formal letter of demand and final assessment notice, the FAN.
The FAN.
Okay. And that FAN, well, that's the BIR's final stance on your liability at that point in the process.
Got it. And if you get that FAN and you think, no, this isn't right, you've got a window to challenge it, yeah. This is where timelines get super important.
Oh, absolutely critical and very, very strict. You must file a written protest within 30 days.
30 days, okay.
30 days of receiving that FAN, and it can't just be a simple note saying, I disagree.
Needs substance.
Yes, exactly. It needs the facts, the law you're relying on, your arguments, and maybe some initial evidence.
Okay.
And if your protest is for a reinvestigation, meaning you need to submit more documents later, you get another 60 days.
60 days from filing the protest.
Right. 60 days from filing the protest to submit all your supporting documents. Miss either deadline, the 30-day protest, or the 60-day submission.
Then you're stuck.
Then, unfortunately, yes, that assessment can become final and, well, demandable.
Wow. Okay, those are tight deadlines right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So you file the protest, submit everything. What's next? Is the ball in the BIR's court then?
It is. The BIR then has its own clock ticking. They get 180 days to decide on your protest.
180 days. 6 months, basically.
Exactly. And that clock starts when they receive your complete supporting documents. It's a key administrative timeline to watch.
And what if those 180 days just pass and you hear nothing? Silence.
Legally, that silence is treated as a deemed denial.
Oh, okay.
So your protest is considered denied. At that point, you have a really critical choice.
Which is?
You could technically wait forever for their actual written decision, or, and this is vital, you can take your case up to the Court of Tax Appeals, the CTA.
Okay, elevate it.
Yes. And you have 30 days to file with the CTA after that 180-day deemed denial period runs out.
A 30-day window.
Correct. Or let's say the BIR does send you a formal written denial before the 180 days are up. Then you have 30 days from receiving that written denial to appeal to the CTA.
And missing those 30-day deadlines for the CTA.
That's really serious. They call it jurisdictional. If you miss it, the court basically loses its power, its jurisdiction to even hear your case. It's over.
That just highlights how crucial tracking these dates is. Now, through this whole back and forth, who has to prove their case? Who carries the burden?
Well, in tax disputes, it's almost always on you, the taxpayer. Yes. BIR assessments are generally presumed correct by law. So you have to show clear evidence, make solid arguments, not just that the BIR is wrong, but why they're wrong and why you're right.
So the presumption is in their favor.
It is. Though, of course, their assessment still needs a proper factual and legal basis. You can definitely challenge it if it feels arbitrary.
Right.
But an interesting change came with the EOPT Act. It actually removed that old rule.
Which one was that?
The one that said you had to have withheld and remitted taxes on certain expenses before you could even deduct them.
I remember that being a common issue.
Exactly. So EOPT got rid of that requirement for deductibility, which might simplify things a bit.
Okay, good to know. Let's switch gears completely now. What if it's the other way around? What if you think the BIR owes you money? refunds, or tax credits.
Right. So this covers things like maybe you paid taxes by mistake or you had too much withholding tax taken out.
Or VAT credits you couldn't use.
Precisely. Unutilized input, VAT, is a common one.
And there's a famous, maybe infamous, deadline rule for these two, isn't there?
Oh, yes. The twin jurisdictional period. Very important.
Twin period. What does that mean exactly?
It means you generally have 2 years maximum from when you paid the tax, or for VAT, from the end of the taxable quarter.
2 years to do what?
To file both your administrative claim with the BIR and your judicial claim with the Court of Tax Appeals.
Both within 2 years. You can't wait for the BIR first.
You can't wait for the BIR to deny your claim if that 2-year clock is about to run out. You essentially need to get both claims filed within that 2-year window. It protects your right to go to court.
Okay, that's a crucial detail. Have these newer laws done anything about speeding up refunds? Because let's be honest, they could take a while historically.
Yes, there are definitely moves in that direction.
Yeah.
The EOPT Act, for instance, put in a rule.
Oh, yeah?
It mandated that the BIR must process and decide administrative refund claims for, say, erroneously paid taxes within 180 days.
180 days again.
Yes, from when you submit all the complete documents they need. For VAT refunds, the NIRC already had a 90-day period for the BIR.
Okay.
And create more as another potential step for VAT and excise tax refunds. If the BIR denies your initial claim, you can file an administrative request for reconsideration directly with them.
A second bite at the administrative apple.
Sort of, and the BIR has a very tight deadline for that, just 15 days to decide on the reconsideration.
15 days, that's quick.
Very. Create More also shifts some VAT refund work to the Department of Finance and, interestingly, makes the BIR publish refund processing stats for transparency.
That's a good step. And the burden of proof for getting a refund, still on the taxpayer.
Absolutely. And it's often quite strict. You need clear, convincing proof. We're talking original documents.
Like the withholding certificates.
Exactly. Your BIR Form 2307s, for example.
Yeah.
You have to clearly show the income related to that withholding was properly declared. Photocopies or gaps in records usually won't cut it.
All right, meticulous records again. Now, beyond these formal protests and refund claims, are there other avenues? Like, can you settle things?
Yes, the law allows for compromise and abatement.
Okay, what's the difference?
Compromise is basically settling your tax debt for less than what was assessed. It might happen if there's real doubt about the assessment being valid.
How much less?
The law sets minimums now, thanks partly to Train. If it's doubtful validity, minimum 40% of the basic tax. If it's because you genuinely can't pay.
Financial hardship.
Right, then the minimum is 10% of the basic tax. Abatement is different. That's when the BIR cancels or reduces the tax, penalties, or interest completely.
Why would they do that?
Usually because the assessment was unjust, or maybe there was a clear administrative error on their part.
Okay, one last thing on assessments. If you appeal to the CTA, does that automatically stop the BIR from trying to collect the tax while the case is ongoing?
Generally, no. The government needs revenue. That's the lifeblood doctrine argument, so collection efforts often continue.
Even with an appeal filed?
Even then. Now, the CTA can issue an order to suspend collection.
Under what conditions?
Usually if they see that collection would seriously harm the government's or the taxpayer's interest. But typically you'd have to deposit the disputed tax amount or file a bond first, sort of as a guarantee.
And only the CTA can stop collection.
That's key. Only the CTA has that power for injunctions against BIR collection. Regular courts can't interfere.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what's the big takeaway for you, the taxpayer? Navigating these remedies demands, well, serious attention to detail, doesn't it?
Absolutely, especially those deadlines. They are strict, non-negotiable.
That 30 days to protest a FAN.
The 180 days for the BIR to act on the protest once docs are in.
Or that crucial twin jurisdictional period, getting both the BIR claim and the CTA appeal for refunds filed within 2 years of payment.
Right. And remember, the burden of proof is almost always on you.
Meticulous records are key, down to having the specific forms like BIR Form 2307 ready and verifiable.
You got it.
But look, it's not all bad news, right? The EOPT Act did bring some positive changes.
Definitely. That mandated 180-day processing for many refunds is significant.
And getting rid of that withholding prerequisite for deducting expenses helps too.
It removes a common friction point, yes. And Create More with those extra administrative review steps for VAT excise and the super quick 15-day turnaround for reconsiderations.
Plus the transparency push with publishing stats.
It all aims for more efficiency, more clarity.
Still, even with laws aiming for ease, successfully fighting an assessment or getting a refund back, it demands precision.
No doubt about it. Understanding the timelines, the burden of proof, and how EOPT and CREATE more specifically change things, it's absolutely critical.
It really is essential for protecting your rights.
All right, let's leave you with a final thought to chew on. If we often say the government's power to tax is the nation's lifeblood, could it be that a robust, fair, and accessible system of taxpayer remedies acts like the essential regulatory valves? Making sure that lifeblood flows justly and fairly instead of, flooding things arbitrarily. Something to think about.